preparing to go live. Okay, we're live. Good morning, everybody.
Hi, hey.
Welcome back to Slovenia Bites, Tapas
Yeah.
travel bug. It's me, Ashley, in California, and
It's me, Tine, in the other side of the pond in London. So not in Slovenia, in London, but I'm Slovenian and I represent the Slovenian contingent here in this this little group when Ashley is obviously our American Slovenian specialist. And our plan is to make you all Slovenia specialists and to bring you on this fantastic fun trip to Slovenia this summer or maybe at the end of this summer. So Ashley, tell us, you tell us about your vaccinations today. This is an interesting story.
I got my second vaccination yesterday, and yay, I can go places. And I'm I have a low-grade fever, a little bit sore, so hopefully I don't do any weird stuff during this video, but I'm very grateful to have that second vaccination.
If you do weird stuff, I'm gonna do weird stuff as well, and it's gonna look more.
Okay. Then we'll just pretend it's like a part of the show.
Yeah, but no, seriously, stuff. Thank you for following us on this weekly Slovenia Bites. It's becoming popular also in Slovenia. I was explaining about this to my fellow Slovenian travel and tourism workers. They are all very excited about the prospect of bringing our dear friends and guests from the USA and Canada back to Slovenia. And as it looks, we are slowly but surely opening up. And if I may share the screen, Ashley, here.
Let me make sure you can.
Most disabled, yeah, you have to allow me to share the screen.
There you go.
No.
No? Okay. Sorry, I thought it worked. All right.
You are the host now. Now should be fine, yeah. So let me see if I can share this with you. So I'm just showing you the US Embassy in Slovenia website. Again, just quickly about the corona and this stuff, we're not going to go too much into the details, but as always, I suggest that you guys go to Slovenian Embassy in DC for information, or even better for you is to go for the US Embassy in Ljubljana in Slovenia. This is their website. And as you see, they regularly update the information. So the latest update is for 13th of May, which is today. And they all put all the latest information up there. So I just don't want to go into much details because it's a lot of happening every week. For example, now the public gatherings is up to 50 people, social distancing still in place and all sorts of stuff. So go here and you'll see all the details about entering to Slovenia. But idea is that slowly the regions of Slovenia are all getting to orange and green, and even some border crossing with Italy, for example, are opening for the local people only. So this is all being monitored and getting open, but we really hope it's going to happen soon. And US is definitely on the priority list for the European Union. So they will agree on some sort of a bridge. So the guests from the US and Canada, of course, can travel to Slovenia. I'm not sure about Canadian, but I think there is a Canadian embassy in Ljubljana as well. I'll check this till next time. Otherwise, check Slovenian embassy in Canada as well. That they have a website too. This is as much as we're going to talk about the COVID this week. It's just some news on our preparation for the farm trips. It looked like we going to have a very lovely farm trip as it looks now, and it's going to be potentially happening second week of September. This is very unofficial for now because I just got this news today that there might be something that we can prepare that time. So just book these dates, this area in your calendar for now, but we'll definitely give you more information when we come to that. But for now, let's learn more about Slovenia. So when you all come there, you're going to know more than Slovenians about the country. So Ashley, what are we going to talk about today?
Today, we're going to see if Tine knows about the history of Slovenia. And he's just going to give us an overview of sort of the political structure, the governmental structure, maybe how history has shaped it, because Slovenia is in a very interesting spot in Europe and has had lots of influences and occupiers. The geographical lines have changed over time. And correct me if I'm wrong, but really what defines Slovenia, over the years has been the language, right? The people.
Yes,
okay.
The language, the culture, and everything. Yes, you are completely right. Yes. So if you mention the language, Slovenian language is a Slavic language. So it belongs to the same group as, for example, Croatia, Bosnia, Serbia, Slovakia, Czechia, and so on. Bulgaria, Russia is the most famous one, Ukraine. It is somehow the most Western Slavic language, although Czechia goes a bit more, or Czech Republic goes more west here, but it is seen as the most Western one. It's also one of the most different Slavic language to the others. For example, we are the only one that use dual. We have some special rules. Dual is like not singular, not plural, but dual is for two people. So it's complicated, and I think we don't have time to debate all this today. But it's very interesting, and like we say for one, for two, and then for many, for plural. So this is very interesting. Linguistically, so we are sort of the most Western Slavic language group. As you see on the west, we border. By the way, we still see the map, yeah, Ashley?
Yep.
What I'm showing,
Yep.
yeah. So on the west, we see Italy. We are bordering Italy, and on the north, we border Austria. Why is this important? Because Italy is a Roman language, and then Austria is Germanic language. So this is the only place in the world where Germanic, Roman language and Slavic languages meet, and it also shows in the culture way. So geographically, I think I will tell also about geographic, because Slovenia is between the Adriatic Sea. So Adriatic Sea, as you see, is part of the Mediterranean basin. So this is all Mediterranean. This is Atlantic, obviously, and then this is Mediterranean Sea. You usually have oceans. We have sea here, and within this Mediterranean, you have Adriatic, which is known for very warm and pleasant waters. That's why, for example, neighboring Croatia has very nice coastline and beautiful seaside. But also Slovenia has a tiny seaside here, which is very pretty. We saw last time, and so Slovenia is between the Adriatic Sea on the south, and then on the north you have the Alps, the Alpine region. So Alpine region stretches all the way here from some sort of like Grenoble area in France, goes over Switzerland, Italy, okay, tiny Liechtenstein, and then Austria and to Slovenia. In Slovenia, we say we are on the sunny side of the Alps. So why is this politically important? Because if you can see, this is a natural passage between west and east. So this is in Western Europe. This is in southeastern Europe. So Slovenia doesn't belong really to west or east or south or west, north, definitely not north, but it's sort of a central Europe in between everything. So, for example, if you buy a Lonely Planet of Europe, you'll find Slovenia in Western Europe, you'll find Slovenia in Eastern Europe, you'll find Slovenia in Southern Europe, you'll find Slovenia in every part of it, because it's so small and it can fit everywhere. And this is also shown geographically. So, but then through years, when different cultures and leaders and nations and all sorts of settlers were traveling through Europe, this would be the natural way where they would pass through, because this, of course, Italy in this part was seen as an old world with Rome and everything, and then Romans would stretch here, and also the last ever battle between Eastern and Western Roman Imperium happened in Slovenia's soul. And then, for example, even before Roman and even after, but like significant one and famous one was also Napoleon, or then the Turks when they tried to come up. Then Slovenia was under Austro-Hungarian Imperium as well, because it has this access to the sea and Trieste, which is now in Italy, but in this area. So this was very important. And then obviously the wars, the First and the Second World War, one of the biggest battles of the First World War happened here between Austro-Hungarians and Italians in this area between Slovenia nowadays and Italy. Was a long battle, was a position war, not a battle. It was over 1 million people died there. A famous Farewell to Arms by Hemingway was written on this front. Not many people, it's not as reported front as, for example, the Western Front, but this was a very big one. And especially Italians, they still know this very well. Place Kobarit, called in Slovenian, or Caporetto in Italian, still means the greatest defeat in Italian language. Even, for example, if a football team will lose 5-0 or soccer team will lose 5-0, they will say this was a Caporetto for them. So this means the greatest defeat. So this was First World War, and all happened in between Slovenian and Italian border. And then Second World War, obviously, Slovenia was in place, bordering Italians, fascists, and Germans, the Nazi regime on the north. Majority of Western Slovenia was under the fascists till 1943, when the fascist Mussolini Italy collapsed. For example, my grandparents had to change their name in Italian name, had to learn Italian, has to speak Italian. It was
weren't allowed to speak Slovenian, right?
Sorry?
They weren't allowed to speak?
No, they weren't allowed to speak Slovenian in public. They obviously all spoke in Slovenia, very proud Slovenians at home. And yeah, there was a lot of oppression by the fascists. And then 1943, the fascist Italy collapsed, but then the Nazi came in, and a lot of people were taken to the camps as well. Per capita, Slovenia was one of the most hit nations of Europe in Second World War. There was also a lot of sort of a domestic civil war between those who were sort of partisans and the other side was war on the other side. So then after Second World War, obviously...
Sorry, yeah. Partisans is a different word for us. So partisans are the people who are fighting against fascists, correct?
Yes, exactly. So it'd be more like what would be a word for it? It's a word that comes from French expression, partisans in Italian. So the partisans were sort of militia,
yeah,
army that established itself. Sorry.
They were resisting the occupation.
Yeah, it was a proper resistance. Yeah, a resistance, or how they say in France. So and they are called partisani, parties. So there were those who were kind of fighting against the oppression from more like a militia style. But they were the official fight against the Germans and the Italians. Mm-hmm. So after the Second World War, obviously the division of Europe, the winners obviously were writing the history, but then Slovenia was obviously at that time part of Yugoslavia. Let's not forget to mention Yugoslavia. Mm-hmm. Yugoslavia was pre-Second World War, first was like a kingdom of Serbs, Croatians, and Slovenians. Then it became Kingdom of Yugoslavia. And then after Second World War, it became a socialist federative republic of Yugoslavia. So Slovenia was sort of, it was part of this Yugoslavia led by Marshal Tito, which was a communist leader. But the difference between Tito and the rest of the Eastern Bloc communists was Tito was very, very open to the West. He didn't want to be aligned with Stalin, so he parted ways with Russia, which almost conflicted in a war with Russia, but it never happened. And that's why Tito helped to establish the so-called non-aligned movement. So it was the countries who were in the middle, not east, not west. So non-aligned movement countries of and Yugoslavia was one of the leading countries of this movement. Yes, so but because Slovenia was seen as Eastern Bloc, Eastern Europe, the Churchill and especially Churchill, it was Churchill's invented the so-called Iron Curtain, which stretched from north here from the city of Gdansk or in Poland. Technically, it went more here to Eastern Germany, and it stretched all the way down over Czechoslovakia at that time, Hungary, and Yugoslavia, Slovenia, and it ended basically here in the Gulf of Trieste. So here, so the Trieste region is also very interesting. You can see how Italy eats into Slovenian lands here. Yeah, Trieste was seen as an independent zone after the Second World War, similar as Berlin. It was an important port. It was strategically most important port because this is as in Europe you can get as possible. For example, if the boats go through the Suez, from China, from this part through Suez, and then if you want to come as deep as possible into the Europe, as in Europe you can come, you come to the port of Trieste, and obviously they weren't ready to give Trieste to a small country like Yugoslavia. But this is not the only reason. Obviously, Trieste was always a cosmopolitan city, was always independent, sort of a port city, as you have them around the world, Singapore now or something. But then it was just given to, or was aligned to Italy. Trieste was divided into Zone A and Zone B. So the zone that you can see here now came to Italy, and the other zone, which was sort of here, was brought to Slovenia or Yugoslavia. Then that's why we never technically had this, but it's funny when you see how it stretches here into our land.
I never noticed that, but yeah, I could imagine Slovenia being a little like, that should be ours. I mean, that's big.
Well, yes and no. I mean, Slovenians were always a small nation, and this was they for example, villages above Trieste, all here, they all have Slovenian names like Nabrežina, Opicine. This is all Slovenian villages, and these are all Slovenes here. So about 200,000 or 150,000 Slovenes live here, and in Trieste. And Trieste still kept this sort of it's a fascinating city. It kept its own identity. It's not seen as much as Italian city, as a more international city. But yeah, we still have part of access to the sea. This border is ours. This sea is ours here, about 40k of sea land. So we are not landlocked, which is crucial. And we have a big port, Koper as well, and so on. So yeah, this was then an Iron Curtain, so-called, and it was big division between Eastern and Western Europe. You still use this expression till today. You will say, people will ask me, oh, you are Eastern European or a Western European. I mean, I don't believe in this division because I come from here. So why it makes it more Eastern than somebody coming from Austria or Munich or something. So and it's just a political division, which I think should remain in history. And now it feels like this because all the borders are open. Obviously, 1991, Slovenia gained independence from Yugoslavia in a 11 days war. War was very brief for Slovenians, so we are very happy and fortunate about this because there were no proper interest in the Yugoslavian army and the Serbian-led regime of that time to gain Slovenia. Other countries were less fortunate. You all remember the 90s in Croatia, Bosnia, and other countries as well, Kosovo and so on. Especially Croatia and Bosnia, they suffered a lot. But so did the other countries also. For example, the Serbia, which was under embargo for a long time, was bombed by the NATO and Americans, Belgrade. So this was all resulting in the wrong sort of leadership in the Yugoslavian, ex-Yugoslavian republics. When the split of Yugoslavia happened, we weren't as fortunate as, for example, Slovakia and Czech. They split from Czechoslovakia very friendly manner. This was all in sort of division. The Balkan was all division of a different nature of nations and religions and so on. Luckily, fortunately for Slovenia, we haven't got a lot of it, and we also flourished the most out of those countries.
Mhm.
You have to know that Slovenia was always politically and economically much more developed than other parts of Yugoslavia. I mean, you can see how tiny Slovenia is in comparison to other Yugoslavia, and we had about 90% of export. Most of the high-tech industry and everything was here. We are always seen as a more Western-orientated part of Yugoslavia. They called it the Switzerland of Yugoslavia, and it was also so after 1991. Slovenia then was one of the shining state countries of the new world of Eastern Bloc to come to join the European family of countries. So we are the first one to be in the European Union of the new countries. We are the first one to get Euro and so on. We are the first one to join the North Atlantic Alliance or NATO and so on. And then soon we also become part of the Schengen countries. So Schengen countries are the countries that have open borders in Europe, which all changed a bit now with Corona, but it's still in place. And even though Croatia is now part of the European Union as well, they are not yet part of Schengen. So this is still a border with Croatia and Slovenia where you show passport when you cross the border and everything. When technically border between Slovenia, Hungary, and Austria and Italy is now open, you remember we just cross borders and you don't show any passports or anything. I personally live when I'm in Slovenia. I live very close to Italian border. For example, I'm very avid cyclist, as you saw on my first post, and I live in this place. And I would regularly go normally cycling across the border and here and there, or go swim here and come back to my. And there is basically no difference apart from signs are in different language and different colors. But it's open.
But do people where you're from speak Italian and and Italians on the border speak Slovenian? Is it very common to be bilingual in those areas?
I mean, that's the part I come from, so Primorska region, this region which was under Italian influence when we want it or not, so under fascism, but also before and after, has this influence from that language and culture. We are more, our dialect is more like la 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 Italian, like it's not like when you go to north of Slovenia, it's more like it has dialect more similar to a German one, a bit more harder, and then this is more like singing dialect, and the way our food are and the way everything is, but also people do tend to understand Italian quite well. Some people work in Italy. A lot of Italians come for shopping to Slovenia now. It used to be different. Before we all went for shopping here, but now they're more coming to us because they get a better value for money. And yeah, a lot of Slovenians speak Italian. Less Italians obviously speak Slovenian because it's smaller and language. But people who live, even a lot of Slovenians live here in this part of Italy, so they obviously speak Slovenian and Italian both perfectly. But also some Italians which have no relation to Slovenia in terms of their ancestors or anything, they learn Slovenian, or at least some words. So it is sort of a thing. But you have to know that Trieste is still a very multicultural city. You have a huge Serbian or Albanian diaspora there, or Chinese diaspora. So it's a big port. So like any other port, it has a mixture of everything. So it's great. It's a diversity. And then you can just see how close we are to Venice. So this is the whole famous Italian part of this Lido here, and the Gulf of Trieste and everything. So yeah, when now politically we are in 2000s when Slovenia opened border, become independent states, join European Union, etc., etc. And yeah, we are now parliamentary democracy, as we discussed before. It is quite complicated now to go into the debate, but you would understand that we have a parliament, like most of European countries have parliament. I think Canada would have a parliament as well. So we elect the representative to the parliament. Then they select the prime minister, which is the head of government, and it's basically a multi-party system. Which means that executive power it goes to the government of Slovenia, which is led by the prime minister. And then we have the legislative power, of course, and in the National Assembly. and then we have a national council, which so in a way we also have two houses as Britain has, or as you would have the Senate, the chambers in the US. And then we have a president as well, and the independent judiciary system. The president of Slovenia gets elected every 5 years. The parliament or the prime minister and everything should be every 4 years. President is kind of a head of a state, but obviously it's a bit more. He doesn't exercise a power in the decision.
Like a figurehead.
Yeah, it's like a head of a state, and it's more like it's also head of the army, and then he meets other heads of states, and he basically appoints the prime minister, but everything else is led by the government, and he's just there to support and to meet other dignities and leaders and so on. So those who are very interested in political systems and political system of Slovenia, it's quite an interesting system, and it's very similar to other European systems. Just go on Google or Wikipedia or anywhere, and you'll have it very in details. We obviously, the interesting thing is that we follow the rules which are written down rules, like, because you only follow the practice, isn't it? The law, your law is more practical. So we us it's very followed by the or you have the amendments and everything. But go. I would suggest you to go here and just read about it. It's very interesting. Yeah. So yeah, we have a constitution, and but yeah, this is very quickly and very, very briefly about the political system. I don't think we need to go into too many details, but I'm happy to answer any political questions you have.
I mean, I have a bazillion questions, but people probably don't want to listen to my questions. But I think you did a really fantastic job of doing an overview. That's always really hard to do.
Well, yeah, it's hard to put everything in a 10-15 minutes talk, but I'm here to answer more questions if needed.
I do have one question, just from your personal perspective. During the 90s, I actually lived in Vicenza, which is not too far from Venice, from 92 to 95, and my stepfather was in the army, and he served in Bosnia. And
here is Vicenza.
Right there. Oh, you can't see where I'm pointing. Right. Yep. There you go. So I lived there, and my stepfather served in Bosnia, a U.S. Army officer, and I was only, I guess, how old was I? 9 to 11 during that time, but I vaguely know that there was conflict happening, and over time I learned more and more about what he experienced. From your perspective, you were a young person during the 90s when Slovenia became independent and there was the conflict in the neighboring countries. Number one, how was that experience for you? And number two, did you notice a significant change when Slovenia left Yugoslavia and became independent in your life?
Yeah, good questions. Thank you. There were, obviously, I was slightly older than you were, but still like a kid or maybe a young teenager when this happened. And for us was, when the conflict started in Slovenia, and because it was only 11 days, you can imagine that it was all hyped up. It was all like, there was no sense of a real fear or real terrible things of the war. Was more a sense of like independence happening. So we would go and we'd follow the news, and then suddenly the whole world would come to our little country or little towns. And like in my town, you would see CNN and BBC reporting, and then the Yugoslavian tanks going, and then there would be massive blockades on the roads, so they were on the bridges, so they wouldn't allow the Yugoslavian tanks to progress towards the border, because the aim of the Yugoslavian army tanks was to protect the border, because they were told that others are attacking them and so on. and the territorial army, Slovenian territorial army, which was an official resistance against Yugoslavian army, they stopped the convoys of all the traffic, all the transit going through Slovenia. So you can imagine there were massive, like 15, 20 kilometers long of lines of trucks. So everything was blocked, so they couldn't move. And for us was just, in a way, excitement seeing these, like there were jets flying over us and stuff like this. But then the parents and older would be very afraid, and
Yeah.
we were sort of, we didn't experience the fear of the war as kids. It was more excitement at that stage. But then following the years when we saw what were happening in Croatia and Bosnia, it was obviously a very terrible moment. And for all of us who, in a way, enjoyed the life in Yugoslavia, Yugoslavia was in many ways wrong country led by wrong people and had a lot of conflicts. But it was also a union, like US is a union or European Union is a union. It was a union of nations that lived together. It was a union of nations that had beautiful scenery, beautiful country, idea of being big country, like winning stuff in Olympics and world championship in sports and stuff. So there was a big sense of unity in Yugoslavia, at least by some people, and then to see this collapsing and to see everything that they were trying to defend against, these nationalistic movements and prevail of people of one religion, then all this sort of prevailed and all this terrible thing that happened. It was just horrible to learn, but it was a learning curve for all of us. I felt sort of distant from what happened in Croatia and in that part of the world. I remember we couldn't go to holidays in Croatia. We could only go to very nearby seaside, and we would see a lot of refugees coming from that part of the world. Slovenia has 2 million people, but at one point we had almost 100,000 refugees from Bosnia and Croatia. So you can imagine, it's like, USA would have 5 million or more, or something even more. Refugees. So it was all this. We saw this, but I can only say, by having so many friends from all parts of Yugoslavia, and we are still, like, in a way, still like a family, the ex-Yugoslavs, when we meet abroad and everything. Many of them struggle a lot. Many of them were displaced around the world. Many of them are now Americans or Germans or British or Canadians because they had to leave the Bosnian or Croatian or whatever. I mean, you can see in sport, for example, you have so many famous worldwide sportsmen in tennis or basketball or whatever, and play for all sorts of countries. But their obviously names and surnames come from Yugoslavian background. So I don't know if you answered your question because I went.
Oh, yeah.
But, I felt it definitely. And I remember, for example, when Americans were bombing Belgrade, and because they were all bombing from Aviano, which is very close to where you were actually. Aviano is a big American base in North Italy. And I remember daily seeing jets going over our house. And it went towards Belgrade and then coming back. And it was sort of that was sort of a scary sight for me. In a way, this was as close as I get to the conflict that happened there in Yugoslavia. So, yeah.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. It's a very personal story. And I think it's important for people to hear that, because at least Americans haven't experienced any type of conflict in that level on our soil. No. I mean, we did have 9/11, but it's a different experience. And
it just shows you how close everything is in Europe. So historically, like I told you so many stuff, like my grandparents lived in 3 different countries. There were people who were old enough to live in 4 different countries in Slovenia. So imagine how much somebody changed there, all the currency, the languages and everything. I don't know. We have a nuclear power plant in Slovenia, which borders Slovenia and it's in Croatian border, but it's technically, as a crow flies, only 300 kilometers from Bosnia. So 300 kilometers is nothing. So technically, it could be bombed when there were conflict there, and this would affect the whole Europe. And And some say that Europe got very engaged in the Slovenian conflict just because of the fear of this nuclear power plant being so exposed. Bear in mind, this was 1991 and Chernobyl was only 5 or 6 years earlier. So all these things happened there. And this is when, I guess, when you live in a small country like Slovenia and in a diverse environment like Europe, with all this history, you're sort of more used of potential changes and borders and everything, as if you live in some beautiful prairie of the States or something, or Canada. Nothing, no neighboring power is thousands of kilometers away.
Yeah, it's a very different perspective. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing that. And I hope that people appreciate that perspective. And I think it's an important thing to know when you visit a place, sort of that history.
Yeah.
Because it informs the culture, and it's interesting.
It's very exciting to learn as well. I mean, some of it is very recent history, and those people who are into very recent history can really speak with people like me, or maybe my parents' generation, which will give them the first-hand experience of this stuff. But then there is other history as well, which goes beyond, which I told you about, beyond going back to all the Roman times, and you can still see the sites of Roman times and the medieval times and everything, which is
prehistoric. You guys have the
prehistoric as well, and all this stuff. So this might be very exciting for you guys, because I know you have a very new land in this perspective. Not that there wasn't cultures before, of course there were, but like seeing all the castles and everything and the Roman ruins and stuff is exciting. And Slovenia has all of this. Like wherever you go, you will see all these historical sites. So yeah.
So if you're watching and you're interested in learning more about the history of Slovenia before what we've talked about today, so Roman, prehistoric, Middle Ages, go ahead and go to the poll on the Slovenia for Travel Agents group and select some of those, and we'll move it up in our queue. But for our next topic, we're going to talk about transportation to, from, within Slovenia. It should be a pretty simple discussion, not as complex as this one. Could you imagine trying to describe your government and your history of your country in 15 minutes? So definitely join us for that, because I think it'll surprise you how simple it is to get to Slovenia. Oh, we have to teach one word before we finish today. Oh, our word is
yeah.
Okay, I need to share my screen.
Or do I need to give you some permission?
Yeah, you have to give me permission.
So how do I do this now?
Or just share your screen and type živijo. All right, you guys, I'm saying it wrong. So the word
share screen. Share this one, and I type živijo.
So guys, this is the word for hello. Pretty simple. It looks harder. I think it looks harder to pronounce than it is. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing it 100% correct, but it is hello, and it's živijo. Živijo?
Yes, živijo. It's very well. You learned very well. So yeah, it's like you say, it's like hi or hello, and it's pronounced živijo. And it's also beautiful because you have a ž as a first word. You see ž, which is z with little hatchet. How would you call this on the top? Like
a hat?
Yeah, or hat or hatchet or roof.
We don't have those in English, so.
Hi.
Oh no, this just says hi. No, I was gonna say živijo. Like, why would I need? Yeah. Anyway, it's živijo. We have a native Slovenian speaker here. You can trust me. It's pronounced živijo, and yeah, it's a beautiful word. You can use when you meet somebody or anything. You just say živijo, and people will go back živijo, or they will say zdravo, or in my part of Slovenia might even say ciao, like Italians.
Oh, okay.
But živijo is a very Slovenian one, and they will love if you learn this. Yeah, very well done.
And I feel like anytime I said a single Slovenian word in Slovenia, people were surprised. So a little effort goes a long way there. So that's why we're teaching you.
Definitely does. Yeah, because we all another maybe of today's topic. I mean, you mentioned language on the beginning. Yes, we're very proud of our language. It's a language spoken by 2 million people. There's a big Slovenian diaspora in the States as well, in Cleveland.
Yeah.
In Cleveland, there's about 30,000 to 35,000 Slovenians. There are quite a few Slovenians that are Slovenian Americans that are quite famous. For example, Ami Klobuchar, which is a member of Senate or member of Congress. I don't know. She was one of the. I think she was even one of the primary candidates for the Democrats. Ami Klobuchar. She's Slovenian, for example.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Klobuchar is a very typical Slovenian surname. Klobuchar. Although she spelled it with CH, not ch. But yeah, you can Google her and you see she's Slovenian. So yeah, she was the most famous one I can imagine. I remember. So
okay.
yeah.
Well, I think that we've taken a lot of people's time today. It was sort of a big Slovenian bite today, but I think it was an important topic. So be sure to join us next week where we talk a little bit about transportation to and throughout Slovenia.
How to get to, yes.
How to get there and how to get around. And also next week is going to be Beekeeping Day on May 20th, a big holiday in Slovenia. So be on the lookout. We'll share a post about what that means and everything. So thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you. Do it again.
Havala.
Yeah.
I don't think I can stop. I think you have to stop the stream now.
Oh wow.
Because you're the host. So go to the top.
And I just ended or what? Oh no.
Do you see where it says live on Facebook on the top?
Yeah.
Click
Stop.